A lot of people know me for Lewis's brother. It's almost like my name. My goals and my passions weren't really important, I would say, when I was growing up. It was all about the direction we're taking with Lewis. A brother that is taking the motorsport scene by storm, as able-bodied as it gets, and then to come from the same family, but to be in a completely different situation, it's hard. I chose to become a racing driver for me, not for anybody else. It's like the anchor of my life. It gives me the purpose to get up in the morning, overcome my disability. I make it my life goal to figure out how I make my disability faster.
Never fear a storm.
Be ready to adapt.
The skill is staying true to ourselves.
Nick, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jake. I really appreciate you having me here today. It's been awesome.
Well, look, you and I go back a long way. I've known you for a very long time, and I was really keen to get you to come on High Performance because I think that your story is one of incredible grit, remarkable resilience, but also not an especially easy journey. And I would love people to really understand the challenges that you faced. And I was thinking on my way in today, what sums up to me, you. And for me, it's this idea that what is hard for you isn't necessarily bad for you.
Yeah. I feel like in this day and age, a lot of people shy away from the tough path. When they have tough days, it really gets them down, and they're very scared to move forward, and it can knock them back and knock them for six for a long period of time. For me, I was brought up on tough love. I didn't have it easy from day one. And obviously parents, especially my parents, they're not going to get things right straight away. It's a trial and error situation. But I was born into the world, I would say, with three wheels on my wagon. I had to try and make the best with it. And I made the decision to continue pushing forward regardless. My parents weren't there really from day one to help me with specific obstacles. I had to find my own way to get, through those tough days. And even now, as a 33-year-old, I struggle with the same sort of things, but my mentality is a lot stronger.
So what would tough love have looked like when you were a young kid?
I think, obviously, I had my disability, born with spastic diplegia, cerebral palsy, and my parents knew nothing about the disability. And they chose collectively, not to wrap me up in cotton wool and not treat me any different to any other, child. And so my dad was on my case from early doors, telling me to not fall over, to make sure I pick up my feet and don't make mistakes.
And what if you did fall over?
He wouldn't shout at me. He would just, I guess, roll his eyes and look at me in disappointment. And it's not necessarily he was disappointed in me. He just knew, that the world is an able-bodied world full of able-bodied people doing able-bodied stuff. And unfortunately, I have this disability. He's not going to be around forever. My mum's not going to be around forever, holding me, picking me up. I've got to find a way to move forward. So when I did fall over, my dad didn't come and help. My mum didn't come and help. As long as I hadn't, broken an arm or broken a leg, they just left me there to figure it out myself. And I guess it's hard from a I was 4 years old, really, is the earliest I can remember, and to try and understand my legs at 4 years old was so hard. And the people you look to is your parents for that help. And so I guess I resented them, to start with, because I was like, gosh, you could at least come and give me a helping hand. And they chose not to. They chose to stand back. And I guess now all of that sort of resentment has turned into gratitude, because it takes a very strong person and a very strong relationship with my parents to stand back when they see their disabled child struggling with real simple things. And yeah, I'm so grateful for the way they brought me up. But you can always improve and do things in different ways. But that was what was instilled in me from day one, and it's got me to where I am today, pretty independent.
And why are you grateful? Why has it got you to this point?
Because it's affected and impacted every part of my life. Yes, physically, overcoming the disability, dealing with bullies at school, dealing with criticism, in my motorsport, dealing with difficulties and relationships within business, and my parents, I guess, taught me self-value quite early. And when I was born with my disability, I felt like I had no value, because no one would look at you seriously. I was just this kid, at a point in my life where I was just in my wheelchair, and no one really gave me their time. No one really spoke to me. I didn't really have any friends at school to start with. And I think because my dad was so strong and hard with me to start with, it built this strength within me that I didn't need people to be nice to me. I didn't need people to wrap me up and treat me any differently. I was strong enough within myself over time to stand up to difficult moments, difficult people, and I'm so grateful for that, because it's made me really hard-headed. And every day I live my life. Physically, I struggle. It's a pain in the bum. At 33, I actually don't know not a disabled person, but a person with my disability older than me. So I don't even know how it's going to be when I get to 50. Will I be struggling with arthritis? Will I be able to walk? All that sort of things. But I feel like what my dad taught me from a really young age has built me in preparation for all of that to come.
If you're in your 40s like me, then you will already know this, right? Energy is everything, isn't it? You've got growing kids like I have. You've got aging parents also like me. You've got pressure at work. And somehow, among all of those additional drains, you've got to be focused, resilient. You've got to be present all the time. But the truth is, right, energy doesn't just show up when you need it. You've got to build it. And that's where I believe this comes in, Vitals from Heights. It's 2 capsules a day. I take them every day. It's packed with 20 essential nutrients, omega-3, all the B vitamins, iron, D3. This is designed by doctors, and importantly, it's backed by thousands, and I mean thousands, of scientific studies and third-party tests. I promise you, this isn't hype, okay? This actually works because I feel it. And without this, I know that I would struggle. When I don't take Vitals, I miss it. It gives me that clean, consistent energy. So I feel I can just show up for everything that matters. And this has everything I need and nothing that I don't. So if, like me, you want to feel more focused and more in control throughout the day, head to heights.com/HP and use the code HP20 for 20% off Heights. Or just click the link in the description. But I promise you, you won't regret it. One of the things that we talk about so often on this podcast is how you show up. And I'm not just talking about like what you do or the things that you say. It's the way you carry yourself. And I've found over the years that the right piece of clothing can change how you feel in that moment. The moment you walk into a room, the moment you try to impress someone or you try to do something that you've wanted to for a long time. And that's why I'm so excited that High Performance is partnering with Vestiaire Collective, the global community for pre-loved luxury designer and vintage fashion. So whether you're looking to shop designer pieces at up to 80% off retail, and by the way, I also love a bargain, or maybe you just want to sell your own pre-loved items with low fees, which I know my wife does, Vestiaire Collective makes luxury accessible. And with more than 15 years of authentication expertise, you can buy and sell on Vestiaire with total confidence. So that's Vestiaire Collective, luxury fashion for less. And we love that they're partnering with us. So if you want to get involved, just click the link in the description and you can buy or sell pre-loved fashion right now on Vestiaire Collective. And you mentioned school very briefly there. Like, school can be an unforgiving and vicious place if you stand out even slightly. And there you are, not just as a person of colour, the only person of colour in your
The
school?
only person of colour, yeah.
And then add into the mix a disability. That is the
Yeah.
kind of thing that we know young people will pounce upon. What was school like?
Yeah, I mean, I was born in the 90s, 1992, and I went to schools full of able-bodied people. So no school for special needs or special requirements.
And was that also a conscious decision, do you think, by your parents?
I've actually spoken to my parents, or especially my mum, about this, and my mum said we didn't even really think about it, and that just shows her mentality was almost like, she had me, and she didn't think, oh, we need to now take him to a school where he's going to get special help. Her mentality was, we're just going to put him in school, any school.
I kind of like that though,
which is great,
Yeah.
which is great, and that's why I'm so independent now, and I sit here, saying that I've done this and I've done that, but it's all stemmed from my parents' attitude, and my mum, I think, is the true unsung hero. I'll go into my mum later if you want, but yeah, they made the decision to put me in a school full of able-bodied people. So my primary school, I was the only disabled person there, the only person of colour there. But it's easy for them to say. It's easy for them to just go, right, Nick, you're going to school today. Have a great day. I was the person that had to deal with that day. I was the person that had to try and walk, because initially I really struggled with my legs. I had an operation when I was 4 years old to help with the movement. So by the time I got to school, I was able to walk a little bit. But now I'm what, 8 years old, and at this point in my life, I hadn't seen another disabled person by the time I was 8. So I felt very, very lonely, almost like I was the only disabled person in existence at that point. And everywhere I looked around me was people that weren't, my colour, and people that were able-bodied and didn't have my disability. So I sort of stuck out like a sore thumb. Yeah. And then obviously physiotherapy and all that sort of stuff, like painful work to continue overcoming the condition whilst I'm at school, became a very difficult period of time. And then I took that into secondary school and had to pretty much start again, where I had to, walk long distances, and that's where I chose to be in a wheelchair.
Did you get bullied?
Of course. Yeah, of course. I think I didn't get bullied because of my colour. I got bullied because I was an easy target, because I walked differently, I looked different, I struggled with really simple tasks. I would just trip and fall a lot of the time. And, when you get to, 13, 14, 15, falling over is now seen as, socially awkward. So I was bullied for that, and mainly, being in my wheelchair. And I chose to be in the wheelchair because of the long distances you had to walk at school. You had to go to different departments throughout, school, or secondary school, whereas primary school, you're in one classroom for all your lessons, so you don't really need to do too much. But for secondary school, you're everywhere. So kids would, come behind me and pull me backwards and in my wheelchair. So I was just lying on the floor, staring at the sky, and I was always, last and late to class. And, people, I remember kids used to I don't know, wear a t-shirt with wheels on it and stuff like that, and just try and make fun of me that way. Also try and be my friend, but take the mick out of me at the same time. So I was, I knew what they were doing, but I couldn't control it,
It's a lonely place, that, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you have to, I want to remind everybody, I'm speaking from my own personal experience, right? So anything I say, doesn't affect everyone else. But from my personal experience, being a disabled person is a very lonely place in itself, because near enough everywhere I go, there's only me that is disabled or has my specific condition. And so I'm the only person, especially within my family, that has to live with it, has to get up in the morning, has to deal with the difficulties and the struggles that the legs present, but also the impact and the knock-on effect it has on my body and all that sort of stuff. And I have amazing, amazing friends and so much support from my family, my brother, my mum, my dad. But it doesn't matter what I do, this condition is gonna be here until I die and leave this earth, and it can be very very lonely. But I want people to know that, like, even when people look at me and I've achieved these things and I've done this and I've done that, I'm still quite a lonely individual, and that's okay. You're not invisible, and I'm not this real strong person that is indestructible. Especially in the last couple of years, I wanted to show my vulnerability that the disability presents.
Do you still feel lonely now?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I mean, I think I always will do. I think, at my core, I feel very lonely. I feel generally like almost like a reject, almost like someone that wasn't meant to fit in, wasn't really meant to be here in the normal conventional way. And I'm able to talk about this now, because I'm so heavily into mental health and well-being, and do a lot of therapy, and I'm in therapy twice a week, and it's a real positive thing. And I think, going back to my parents, the way my parents brought me up was almost like, you can do it, Nick, you can do it, Nick, you can do it, Nick. And that's true. I could. But I didn't really sit with the disability. I just swept it under the carpet and just kept pushing forward. And I think over the last, 2 years or so, I've really started to take time within therapy to sit with it and actually, maybe talk to it for the first time, and really try and understand my relationship with my disability. I realized it's actually not as strong as I once thought it was. And so, yeah, I feel very lonely with it. But I feel like I've got to a point with it so much that it doesn't stop me doing anything. But it's like dragging a like a bag of sand with you everywhere you go. It's always there to pull you back, or to remind you certain things. So it can be frustrating, but I don't know any different, and I wouldn't want to be any other way.
And I'm actually really pleased for you that you're in a place where you're happy to come on a show like this and talk really openly and honestly. Because if I think about when I first met you, and it would have been when I worked in Formula One in 2009, and you were at a lot of the races,
Yep.
With Lewis at McLaren, and we got to know each other well, and we ended up doing a bit of work together. I was like, you got to meet Nick Hamilton. He's got a permanent smile on his face. He's the happiest guy.
Yeah.
He's the guy you want to invite to every party. And I think,
appreciate that.
That is obviously, it was an element of that, but there's also an element where that was a facade.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important that you're now able to actually say, it breaks my heart a bit when you say you still have this sense that you feel a bit like a reject.
No, I this isn't. I'm not speaking out for people to feel sorry for
Sure.
me. Absolutely not. I'm being so open because I pride myself in talking about subjects that a lot of people find difficult to talk about, and I feel like over the last 3-4 years, I've really started to see what my purpose is. And my purpose, I believe now, is to live with my disability. Yes, it's hard and it's tough, and I do this and I do that, and I struggle with different bits. But I think I'm here for a purpose, and that purpose is to live with the disability, to then create awareness, but also shine light on the positive side of disability as well. But to be here in service of others and try and help people through the same sort of mental process that I've gone through, or difficulties, both able-bodied people, disabled people. And and you're right, when you met me, 2009 or whatever it would be, I lived my life as a kid, smiling. I was always smiling, and that's kudos to my parents for always putting a smile on my face. Um, but it was definitely a facade. It was a mask that I carried with me, because I think, deep down, I was unhappy with being in my wheelchair at the time. And I have to continue to reiterate, I'm not trying to be negative to anybody that's in a wheelchair, because they lead fruitful lives. But from my point of view, it was, especially when you have a brother that is taking the motorsport scene by storm, who is, as able-bodied as it gets and is so super talented, to, come from the same family, but to be in a completely different situation, where I'm in this wheelchair, I'm not beneath, but sitting down where everyone else is standing up. I'm looking up at everybody. Everyone's looking down at me. It's a lot for a young kid to take on. And I just didn't know where my life was going to go. But Formula One and adults made me feel accepted. I felt like I struggled at school to feel accepted.
Yeah.
But adults made me feel accepted. So I was more in my element. When I met you, for example, in Formula One, I felt very comfortable there.
And how much of an additional challenge did it present as you were growing up that, Lewis did go on this amazing journey in motorsport? And as we all know, because it's the way that world works, you can't do that on your own. Everyone has to come on the journey with you. So you have to make sacrifices. Your mum and dad would have had to make sacrifices. And as is often the case with people who are doing what Lewis is doing, it becomes the role of the whole family, right, to support that person. And yet you're having to do that while also carrying a disability and having your own sort of personal struggles.
Yeah. There's a lot of people in the world or think that the Hamilton family just turned up and Lewis was 7-time Formula One world champion from nothing. But we all, worked collectively to get him to where he is today. We sacrificed a lot. My parents especially sacrificed a lot.
What sort of stuff?
I mean, for them, my parents had no money. My dad, was a poor man, to be honest. Didn't really have, the best of upbringings, and I think he just wanted the best for Lewis, but also to try and, pull the family, out of a lot of financial struggle and grief. And initially it was to keep Lewis out of trouble, I think, for him to focus on something after school and whatever. And he, chose go-karts, and my dad worked 4 jobs. A lot of people know the story already, but, worked 4 jobs and, put up signposts and everything he could to support the family. But also my dad had a disabled son as well. So that required, a lot of attention from my mum, to hold the household together, but also to protect me, because I needed carrying everywhere, and I couldn't physically move a lot when I was a kid. So there was a lot on my dad's plate, and then all I knew was following Lewis to races, and I was never jealous of him. I never wanted to compete with him. There was never this sibling rivalry, that some people may think that there was, because there really wasn't. It was, I wanted the best for Lewis, and I wanted him to have all the success, and I just wanted to sit and watch him, because I couldn't believe how incredible he was. Just A, as a brother, but B, as an athlete and as a talent. he had a lot of pressure on his shoulders. My dad didn't let him have it easy, because it was either this has to work, or you're gonna have to maybe work somewhere else, like go to Tesco's or something, because Lewis focused on his schooling, but he didn't put nowhere near as much time in his schooling as he did in his motorsport. So if it doesn't work, he's gonna be stuck on where he goes. And my dad, was so hard on him, and that's where Lewis gets his like relentless determination, where every race that he drives, it's like it could be his last one, because that's the budget that we were on to start with. And so we got Lewis to where he is today, and to be a part of it has been a pure honor, yeah, I mean, I guess I sacrificed some of my life, and I guess the attention from my parents, because I didn't really, it's hard to say, but I didn't really, my goals and my passions weren't really important, I would say, when I was growing up. It was all about the direction we're taking with Lewis, right? So I didn't really feel like I had that relationship where I could focus on maybe what I wanted to do as a kid, but I really didn't know what I was going to do because of my disability. So, it's hard.
But it's, I always feel when people are sitting in the chair that you're sitting in, it's difficult to sometimes say those things, because you think, well, what are the connotations? Does it make it sound like my parents weren't caring? But
no, of course they are.
We also have to understand that, like, you were in some ways a victim of circumstance, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't get Lewis to where he got to without everyone giving it everything.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a cost to that. And I guess I think though a bit about, where was your self-esteem at that point, when it was already kind of impacted by what was going on at school, and then everybody wanted to talk to your brother or laud your brother? He's standing on the podium all the time.
Yeah, it was tough, because a lot of people know me for Lewis's brother. That's like, it's almost like my name. Like, oh, you're Lewis's brother. Like, I don't have a name. And so there's that, but then there's also like, having my disability. So my self-esteem at the time, I'm trying to figure out how I become valuable, or a person that matters just in my own life, where I can go to school and people don't take the mick out of me, and people see me as a valuable person. And then what didn't really help was the fact that my brother was like one of the most well-known racing drivers up and coming, so it was like, I didn't feel valuable in myself just at school, but then people would talk to me because my brother's famous now. But so it's like a double whammy. They just wouldn't speak to me just for me, and I just wanted people to speak to me for me. And even now, it's hard, because the amount of people that speak to me and talk to me and stuff. And yeah, okay, people are starting to see the work that I do and the things that I've achieved, but I'll never get rid of this Lewis Hamilton's brother thing. And I wouldn't change it for the world, but it's been tough. We a lot has been, as we said, a lot's been sacrificed, but continuously as well. My relationship with Lewis has, to an extent, been sacrificed, because it's not like I can go to the cinema with him and just have a night out. You everything we do straight away potentially is going to get paparazzi or whatever, and you can't just be brothers out in public, because especially with social media today, there's comments everywhere, people feeling that they got to say what they got to say, and put as much pressure on just celebrity life, and it's been sad, because really all I want to do is just have a pizza with my brother at home, or have a pizza out, or just live a normal type of day, but unfortunately we can't do that.
When we had the ex-trader Gary Stevenson on the podcast, he said something that really struck me. Working harder isn't the solution. If the systems around you aren't set up to support your efforts, you simply end up burning out. And I think that's a reality that so many business owners feel. I've certainly been there myself. You start with passion, then the admin takes over, chasing invoices, losing receipts, not getting paid. All of that gets in the way of what you actually wanted to build in the first place. And that's why we've partnered with Tide, because they're not just offering people a business account, they're offering clarity. It's an all-in-one financial toolkit that will help you take back control. So you can send your invoices, you can track your expenses, you can automate your taxes, you can even issue team cards all in one app. So it's quick, it's simple, and it gives you time back to focus on what really matters. And if you sign up now using our code HP50 and spend £100 on your new Tide card, you'll get £50 cash back. T's and C's apply. Just hit the link in the description. Have you not managed to find a way to win back some of that, like the ability to just be brothers, even behind closed doors?
Yeah, behind closed doors, I think we've we've found a lot in like gaming. We've always gamed, me and him together. We used to play racing games. Now we play shooting games. Now we play Call of Duty together, and I think that connection where it's like, you put your headphones on, it's just you and him, no one else. And it's like, I always explain it's like being in the pub with your mates. That's what gaming's like. And you can maintain so many amazing relationships because you're talking to them every day. Me and Lewis don't want to talk about racing because all we do is talk about racing, and racing is our lives. The last thing we want to do is talk about racing. So instead, we talk about, obviously not seriously, but in Call of Duty terms, what guns we're going to use and how we're going to, what strategy.
Just be in the same place together.
Yeah. But he's in Monaco and I'm at home or whatever it is, but we're still close, and it gives us a reason to message in the morning and being like, all right, we're going to play games tonight, and have you sorted your gun out? Have you done this? Have you done that? And for Lewis, I realized that's his way of switching off, and also my way of switching off. And to be able to switch off together is really, really important.
And what was he like as a younger brother? I was thinking about when you were saying your parents would allow you to get yourself up if you fell, right? Was he keen as an older brother to come and try and lift you up off the floor or whatever?
No, no, Lewis was, Lewis normalized my disability. And what I mean by that is, just as much as my parents didn't treat me any differently, as a son, my brother definitely didn't treat me any differently as a brother, where it was literally like I was like his crash test dummy. So anything that looked dangerous, he would get me to do it first to see how dangerous it was, And, Lewis always said to me, and he might have said in interviews already before, he always wanted a little baby brother, and his wish was finally granted. And yeah, obviously I ended up with this disability, but for him, it wasn't like, oh, I've now got this baby brother. Oh, he's disabled. It was, I've got a baby brother, and I'm going to pick on him, and I'm going to treat him just like I normally would any baby brother. So, the amount of falls and crashes and scrapes and bumps and everything I've had from Lewis just play fighting with me and being rough with me, like brothers are and siblings are, that actually has been a real big part in like how strong I am internally. Really? Falling over doesn't bother me at all. Hitting my head, if I'm bleeding out or whatever, I'm not bothered about it. Because my brother was always, I remember him pushing me in this go-kart and trying to get me to go around corners really fast, and I would flip out of it and end up in a bush and, whatever, hit my head on something, and he would be like, "You're all right, get back in." And it taught me to like...
That's brothers for you.
And it taught me to deal with the pain.
Yeah.
And just carry on. And that's what I do my whole life now. So my pain threshold is super high. And I just continue. Doesn't matter what's going on. I'll deal with the pain later.
And was Lewis aware that his career was kind of having an impact on your life as well, as he was starting out?
Um, I guess so. You know, you'll never have I'll never have that conversation with him, you know, where it's like, did you realize like how much of an impact you've also had on my life? You know, because that's not his fault either. You know, he was, I guess, you know, chosen in life to have this talent and this opportunity to maximize, and he did that. And you know, I'm not saying, you know, life is terrible, because it isn't. Life is great. We're a great family. We've achieved great things. Lewis is happy and doing amazing things, you know, with what he has. You know, my parents are well and healthy, and that's all that we can wish for. You know, I think Lewis does sit sometimes and think, you know, wow, you know, my brother sacrificed a lot. But at the end of the day, he was the one that had to drive the car and achieve all these things. You know, I guess as a family, we just provided the opportunity. My dad provided the opportunity in terms of sponsorship and finances and doing deals with teams and whatever. And I helped him when it came to still trying to be a brother to him, you know, with all the stuff that was going on and stress and press and pressure. I was still trying to be there, being his bro. And because really, just as I'm vulnerable, he's also vulnerable, and you have to understand him in the best way.
And there might also be there will be a really nice moment, hopefully in the not too distant future, when, you know, Lewis is not 21 anymore. He's probably going to retire from F1 in the next few years. And then there could be that really lovely moment where you do get to be brothers again. You do finally have time.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, we try our best to make time, you know, and regardless, you know, our foundation is so strong. It doesn't matter what we do. We're always going to be brothers. You know, so we don't want to wish our life away, you know, too soon. You know, he's in a real good place, you know, still being in Formula One and having a career that's got a lot of longevity. You know, and then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But as long as he's happy and he's healthy, that's all I care about.
I think one of the coolest things that I ever saw you do was when you decided to get into motor racing. Because I think with everything we've just spoken about, it would have been so easy for you to go, do you know what, the one thing I'm never going to do is get behind the car with the name Hamilton on the side of that car. Because of course, the comparisons come, right? It's the most normal human thing in the world, isn't it?
Yeah.
How did you decide to do that?
Well, firstly, I want people to realize I chose to become a racing driver for me, not for anybody else. It wasn't to compete with Lewis or try and take any limelight or steal the light from him or anything like that. For me, it was like, I was born around motorsport. I eat, slept and breathed it every day. I was always at a racetrack supporting Lewis. I always wanted to race go-karts. Didn't think I'd ever be able to drive a road car, let alone a race car with my disability. You know, and I got the opportunity from my dad when I got to 18. I got out of my wheelchair and basically taught myself how to walk. And then I used my motorsport to build my leg strength and to make me more independent physically. And then I ended up in Renault Clio Cup Championship, which is at the time the toughest one-make series in the UK. And it was more, now thinking back and looking back, you know, it's all the childhood traumas and wounds that I had as a kid, thinking I felt my life's not gonna go anywhere. People aren't giving me attention, paying me attention. How do I get a job? I can't go on the tube every day. I need to physically figure out something that I can do where I can have some sort of longevity. Motorsport is relatively safe if I find a way that I can train my legs use my legs in a race car. It's more just an achievement for myself and little Nick, who thought at 4 years old, 5 years old, they'd never be able to do anything like that. Now even today, I put my helmet on, standing in the garage to get into my British touring car, and I can't believe that I'm physically able to do that. And not just physically able to do that, but physically able to compete really well with the limitations I have. And so that's why I chose to race. And if I hadn't have raced, and I've said this many times, my legs wouldn't be as strong as they are. And I don't think I would be as physically independent as I am, because I had to build myself to compete against able-bodied people.
I saw an amazing quote from you where you said, you're a Paralympian competing in the Olympics.
Yeah.
And I don't think that, because when you're racing in a car, you're hidden away from the cameras, right? No one can really see. They just see the car going around the track. They might see your eyes behind the visor, but you see so little of the driver.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe you get the credit for actually the physical challenge that you have to undertake when you're competing against 25, 30 other people who can go to the gym and they can squat and they can lift and they can go running for 25 miles. They can do stuff that you can't even attempt to do. Yet come Sunday afternoon at racetracks around the UK, you compete on a level playing field with them. And I think that you deserve so much credit. Like, to me, that is more than a world championship, right? That is like, because that's real. Like, what you've done is real. That. Would you explain to us the process in the car, actually how much of a physical challenge it is, how different the experience is for you compared to some of the other drivers you compete against?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was literally just having a conversation yesterday with Lewis about this, and even Lewis is still learning the differences with me when it comes to racing. It's really not that simple, and it's a real pain in the bum, to be honest, because obviously the biggest thing is the disability, and you've got to figure out how the disability works within a race car. And I can't flex my ankles, so my ankles are pretty static in where they are. And a lot of drivers accelerate and brake with their ankles, and they're able to modulate and control the attitude of the car, braking and accelerating. And so everything comes from the thigh muscle with both of my legs. And so I literally have to accelerate and then pull my leg off of the throttle rather than, nicely pull it back with the ankle, for example.
So it's either on or off at that point?
It's on or off. It's like a switch in some cases. And then obviously you've got the pelvis and the hips that are very, very tight, the spasticity in the muscles, constantly like a coiled spring almost. So it's like trying to figure out how the hell you use all this tightness, because it's like a domino effect. You need the bend in your leg to accelerate, but then when you take your leg off, you can't steer, your leg gets in the way, all that sort of stuff. Then you mold your body into the seat, you pop in ribs because you're moving all the time, and the legs just generally don't want to work. So my last proper seat fit took me 12 and a half hours to figure out what I need. So I can't just jump from car to car. And obviously the modifications, which are basically, one big accelerator pedal that's really wide, gives me loads of surface area to put my feet. Same with the brake pedal, and then I have a hand clutch. These things are needed for me to race. But then now I'm at a point, I'm racing within a second of, top touring car drivers, and now it's fine details like brake trace and all that sort of stuff. And I'm noticing my disability obviously gives me a disadvantage to find those last like 2.5 tenths that you need, or through one sector. But I make it my life goal to figure out how I make my disability faster.
So what does success look like for you?
It's a really big question. Well, success for me is what you deem it. I feel like you can only succeed at your own life. You can't succeed at anyone else's life, and you can't succeed by doing what other people do. When I was a kid, success for me was walking up 3 steps without holding on to anything. and having a day where I didn't fall over was a successful day. For me, I'm very proud of who I am as a person, and I think I'm a very honest and decent individual, and I'm really grateful and proud of myself for the man that I've become today. And I feel like I'm already successful because I've managed to overcome my disability, live with it in a way that it doesn't plague me. It doesn't affect me to where I'm down in the dumps. You know, I know how to go through life with it. Yes, I've raced cars and I continue to race cars, and I've achieved a goal that I always wanted to achieve, whether it's the fact that I haven't won a race, and I would always love to, but I don't necessarily need to win a race to be successful. I'm already there, and I'm already doing a great job. And so that's what success is to me, and I'm already there. And sitting on this chair, talking to you, talking about my disability so openly, but also my mentality and everything is a success in itself. And I just feel people need to realize that success is only what they can, muster up themselves, and not really try and be like anyone else.
There was a great quote I saw recently from Chloe Kelly, who's just won the Euros with England, and she said, "I'd love to say thank you to everyone who wrote me off.
Yeah.
I'm eternally grateful." Your story reminds me of that quote from Chloe Kelly, because I don't think you are sitting here without the bullies. You're not sitting here without the fact that Lewis allowed you to be his crash test dummy for so many years. You're not sitting here without the parents who allowed you to get yourself up. But to tell people the story that you were dealt a hard hand and you did the best with it, and here you are with a smile on your face, is only telling half the story, right? Because in 2016, there was a real challenge for you, a mental health challenge. And I think if you're okay, I would like to talk about it, because I think it's such an important part of your story, and it's such an important thing for us to discuss for people that watch this show, because there will be very few people listening to this or watching this who carry your disability, right? There'll be many, many people watching this or listening to this who are suffering with a different kind of challenge, physical or mental. They're in a dark place. They have those exact same feelings of loneliness that you've had all your life. I changed schools because I was bullied, and I'm sure you can relate to this. I feel that sense of loneliness now as much as I did at school. Do you know that feeling?
Yeah.
When you mentioned the kids who pretend they're your friend and they're secretly not.
Yeah.
The most painful of all.
Yeah.
Because you finally think maybe someone is going to be a friend of mine, and then it turns out they're just like everyone else. They're using you to make themselves feel better. And having had therapy myself, are you happy to tell us sort of what happened in 2016 and what you went through?
Yeah, of course. Firstly, I don't want to sit here and say that my story is any better than anybody else's. I'm here just, telling my story like you asked me to do. Everyone's been bullied or, gone through hardships and hard times. This is just how I dealt with it. Now, obviously, in 2016, my motorsport was and is very, very important to me. It's like the anchor of my life. It gives me the purpose to get up in the morning, overcome my disability, feel like I have purpose and drive and mission and a passion. And I was in and out of motorsport for many years due to lack of funding. And a lot of people, think that Lewis pays for my racing, and I'm only here because of Lewis and because he pays for my motorsport. And that really, really isn't true. I did everything on my own. And I got to a point where I wasn't racing. I couldn't get the budget to continue racing. And I don't know, I was in a position where my dad was a multimillionaire. My brother was a multimillionaire. And I was this person that was basically lost, where I couldn't race, I couldn't find the money, and money became really, really important. Almost like I put success on money. You're only successful if you got a load of money. And so I didn't really know where I was going to go or what I was going to do, but I just wanted to make a load of money was my plan. And didn't know anything about betting or football betting or gambling or whatever. And I'd never been to a casino in my life, and I was in my flat at the time, and I logged on to like a website, gambling website, and I found online like blackjack, and I was like getting to a point, putting a little bit of money on, and I was winning and losing money, winning and losing money, and it put me in a real bad spiral where I basically had a gambling addiction for like 7 months. Got to a point I lost all of my savings, all the money that I put into, all the money that I created myself. And for the first time in my life was, trying to really think about how logistically I could commit suicide at the point, because you are related to a driver or a sports personality that is worth loads of money. And I didn't want that to be a burden on him, being like, well, I've got loads of money and my brother's struggling from a gambling addiction. And it wasn't it wasn't his fault. It's no one's fault. No one knew about it. It was just me living a parallel life. Basically, my my like flat was in a state. I just gambled all day with all my savings, basically, and I lost thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands, and I couldn't speak to my parents. I didn't want to speak to my parents just because I thought my dad would kill me to start with, and I don't know what they would say or do. So I spoke to the Samaritans. I decided to call them, and at that period of time, I felt like they really like saved my life at that point, because I was in a dark room at the end of everything, thinking, shoot, what do I do now? Where do I go now? What do I do? And I don't want to talk to my parents, but at least I want to speak to someone. And, I'm so, I guess, angry at myself for putting myself through that. It was no one else's fault but my own. But I try to not blame myself too much, because I was going through a lot. I've been going through a lot as a child, and I think a lot of things that happen as a kid, they determine the decisions that you make later in life. And so the first time I was open about that, was in my book that I wrote in 2023, and that was a real hard thing to be able to write. But I'm so glad that I did, and hopefully when people write my book, or they write my book, when they read my book or listen to this podcast, they see the openness about it, and that it's okay to be in dark spaces and dark places. And I speak about dark places so well, because I've been in like some of the darkest spots of my life and pulled through it, and got it through having some structure in my life, but also a lot of self-talk, a lot of therapy, and it's built me into the character I am today.
What does that darkness look or feel like for you?
So it's a really good question. I think darkness for me, I was at a point in my life where, I was just lying on my back on cold floor in a dark room. I do a lot of my thinking in darkness, and I think self-talk, sitting there on a cold floor in a cold house in a cold place, feeling cold, that for me is like what darkness feels like. And to mentally try and pull yourself out of that place is the hardest thing. Now, fortunately, I was never into drugs. I don't smoke. I don't drink. So I never looked to that sort of thing to help me deal with it. My mum, from day one, always taught me to deal with pain on my own, like physical pain. So she sounds awful, but she's not. She's amazing. My mum, she never really gave me any medicine or really helps me with my cuts or anything like that. She taught me to deal with the pain, physical pain, without any help or medication or anything. And I think that's really helped with sitting with like mental pain. I'm really good at it. I've realized I'm really good at sitting with that pain and realizing that it does subside eventually. You know, but actually bad days, difficult times, all those moments, the days where you fall over, the days where you struggle, those are the days that you should actually, hold on tightly to, because they build you as a man, they build you as a person, as a human. But at the time you just don't realize it. But I'm so proud to be, on here talking about it, to be open about it, because it matches my purpose now, to go through those difficult moments and times. And I know a lot of interviews that I do, I'm very dark, and I'm very, I'm very dark. I'm not necessarily like happy and having a laugh and having a joke. And that's because, I'm here to just create awareness. I'm here to be honest. I don't want to be like an influencer who tries to pretend that life is going great when really, no, we were struggling here and we're struggling there. I want to be a person that speaks my truth, and takes people on the journey with me, because if I can help just one person that's listening to this podcast, then I've done my job.
And can I just say, this conversation absolutely will have helped someone. It will have helped people. There'll be people now that don't know where to turn, because that sense of loneliness, again, it's a recurring theme, I guess, in your life. That sense of loneliness is very common for people when they're in these dark mental health places. They can't turn to a parent or a partner or a friend because of the stigma or the embarrassment that we still attach to people with mental health challenges. And I think the reason for that is one of the most like pernicious and evil emotions that rears its ugly head when we're in a situation like this, and that is that sense of shame.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And like, I know that Lewis gave you a car that you sold, right, to pay your gambling debts. Am I right?
Yeah.
I mean, the sense of shame that would have been attached to that.
Bad. It was so painful.
Was it?
Yeah, absolutely. It was horrible. Lewis got me this present for my birthday. I can't remember what birthday it was. It was amazing. It was like my pride and joy. And I've seen, because I've done articles, with newspapers and stuff, and I mentioned about this, and people are like, oh, poor you had this amazing car that you could sell, and that's not what I'm talking about.
That misses the point entirely.
It misses the point completely, entirely, right? And the fact is that I was giving this thing, because really at the end of the day it's a thing, but it was from Lewis's kind heart. He wanted to do something that would put a smile on my face. And I put myself in a position where I had to use that it wasn't to pay gambling debts, because I was never in debt. It was to pay my tax bill, basically. And the guilt that I felt in that moment, because it was Lewis's money, even though it was a gift for me, I felt like I didn't work. I didn't earn that car. I didn't physically earn it. And then I put myself in a position and then used it to get myself out of a predicament. And then I literally had no money at that point, where I then used my dad luckily didn't sell my first car. And so I was driving around in my first car, and I felt like I'd taken 7 years like back step. And car was a great car, but it was rusty and didn't look good. But also people expect me to be keeping up appearances. So when I'm having a picture with them, or they see, oh, that's Lewis Hamilton's brother, because a lot of people do, and I'm in this car that's sort of not clean, not going too great. People are like, is that your car? And it was hard for me, because I was like, I put myself in that place. But I'm so grateful that I did put myself in that place. It's taught me so much, and it's a situation that was awful, but that I'm really proud of, and it's great to be able to talk about it now. It still does hurt and it's still painful. And people are always going to be talking about what they've done in the past with pain. But how I got out of it was realizing that I had the strength within myself to do it. My mum I told my mum eventually, she helped me put structure in my life. And the structure literally was just waking up, getting in the shower, being clean, having a clean area, having a clean house, all that sort of stuff. Then I went to the gym and I started doing all that, to try and get myself back and have a goal and a task. And then all of this, it's a real long answer, Jake, I apologize, but all of this made me realize that success is nothing about money. Money is really, really not important. People say, well, that's easy for you to say when you've got money. But really, at the end of the day, money is just so that you are able to pay bills and live life, hopefully without stress. But it doesn't give any happiness. It doesn't give any fulfillment, from my point of view at all. What gives me happiness and fulfillment is helping, supporting people, giving people hope, and waking up and having a goal or a passion or a purpose, not because it gives me money, but because it fulfills my heart and fulfills what I feel like I'm on this planet to do.
And the biggest lesson that you took from that period?
Biggest lesson I took from that period was that it doesn't matter how dark and awful you feel, and you feel that life is like pointless, and that you feel like unworthy, that you have the strength to A, get out of it, and B, you're already a very, 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 very valuable human being, and you actually don't need to look to anybody to give you that value, or that validation. You have to look at yourself to pull yourself out of those dark moments, and there's going to be people waiting to catch you and hug you and support you once you take that first step.
And talking of that, the fear you had to tell your dad or to tell your brother, how actually was it?
So I don't know. I can't remember actually telling my brother, but I remember telling my dad. I had to eventually call them and bring them over to my apartment at the time. Because, as I said, fully financially independent, physically independent. I paid for everything myself. It was all my stuff, right? And then I just got to a point where I couldn't afford anything else. But luckily, I had money coming in from a job that I had. So I still didn't ask my dad for any money. I don't want to ask my dad for any money. I'm in a position, I've got to find my own way out. And so I remember calling my dad and said, Dad, everyone come over. So my brother wasn't there. My mum and dad were, obviously, and they could see that my apartment was a state, because I was just eating pop noodles basically every day. Because as long as I felt full, I didn't really care. It just meant that I could gamble more. That was literally the position I was in. And I hadn't showered, and I didn't really care. And, no one was at my apartment, but they could see how awful it was. And it was a terrible time, because I was like, I've gambled all my money away, Dad. And I'm not asking for help, but I don't know what to do now. And I was initially really scared, because I was like, my dad's going to kill me. Not literally, obviously, but he's going to be very upset about it and potentially have a go at me or whatever it is, which won't help. And my mum will be nervous and worried. But he was like, it's normal. Pretty much when his response, it was like, so many people do that. They go to casinos, they've been to casinos, they gamble. Some of them walk away, some of them don't. and he even said, he said he's been to many casino in his time. Fortunately, he was strong enough to walk away. But it does get people in. It does hold them in. So don't worry about it. And I remember literally after after that, he gave me a hug and he was like, "If you need anything, I'm here." And that's all I needed from that. And I was like, wow. And that taught me that that's the power of family. That doesn't matter what's going on, they're there to understand. And even if you think they won't, they will. And if they don't understand, that's also not their fault. And if you don't have family, because there are people that don't have family, then you have the Samaritans and you have charities that you can talk to. But here, for me, it wasn't my family that pulled me out. It was me that pulled me out. So I don't want to be awful. It doesn't sound, I didn't need my family to pull me out. I just needed me.
And for people listening to this that are nervous about calling the Samaritans, nervous about seeing a therapist, nervous about telling the world, finally facing up to that shame that they're feeling, your advice?
Firstly, the Samaritans are incredible. You call them and it's completely anonymous, and it's a non-judgmental place and space, and it's nice just to have someone to talk to, a voice to talk to, go through any feelings that you feel. I wouldn't feel nervous calling the Samaritans ever, because it's a real safe place and it's actually really, really empowering. When it comes to therapy, therapy for me is one of the most empowering things that you can do, the strongest things you can do. A lot of people, there's a stigma around therapy. You have to only go to therapy when there's a problem, or, if you're struggling, or a lot of people think, oh, I'm in therapy, so that must mean I'm really struggling, or I'm a, really difficult human, or whatever. For me, if you decide to go to therapy, you're like one of the strongest people there are, because you're deciding to build your mental strength, your mental muscle. You're open to learning more about yourself, learning more about how you can be better for other people in your life and relationships and whatever. And so people that tell me that they're in therapy, I applaud them. And I feel like everyone should at some stage go to therapy, but don't just go to therapy and then stop because you think, oh, I don't feel as bad anymore. Because also therapy, what that does, I realized, therapy also teaches you to enjoy the moments where you're happy and succeeding. You don't just go to therapy to talk about life that's really difficult. You go to therapy, and my therapist, Hannah, it's lovely to walk in and go, Hannah, I'm having a great week. She'll be like, amazing, why? Well, I had a great week because I'm doing this, and because I'm doing that, and because I'm doing this, because whilst you're at therapy, you're not just talking to your therapist, in my case, Hannah, you're talking to yourself, and you're building yourself with all these, these tools of strength, to talking about really difficult stuff, and I'm good at it, and then talking about when life is going well, and I'm also good at it. And so when people say, stop going to therapy because I felt like, now I'm like, go to therapy. It's like an internal thing. And that's where I'm at. As long as you can afford it, or I realize I'm in a fortunate position being able to afford it, but try and continue to go, because you're always evolving.
I've loved this conversation. There's a great phrase that I've sort of lent on for a long time, which is, I was always looking outside myself for strength and for confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And now I realize the only place you can find it is within.
100%.
And I now realize it was there all the time.
Absolutely. All the time. And especially, in society today, there's so many people having to look out for outwardly for external validation, and really none of that matters. Everyone's on their own journey, on their own path, and it's about staying true to yourself, sticking to your guns, what you believe in, and you go with it, and you'll go through the peaks and troughs. When you go through the troughs, you realize you're always strong enough to get through it.
What a great way to finish. Nick, thank you so much, man.
Cheers, Jake. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, mate.